Hello and welcome to the Debrief. I'm Kendal Bailey, and today I have the honor of speaking with someone who's had a significant impact not only on me personally, but on my career. Dominic Petrovia has been a nurse for over 18 years, navigating the neonatal and pediatric arena, and he has been incredibly successful making the translation from the bedside to the boardroom. He currently is a vice president at the national level, making significant impact on nursing quality and nursing engagement. Again, I am so excited to be speaking with Dominic today, as he has guided me and worked with me throughout my nursing career and has truly shown me mentorship and leadership in nursing. Dominic, it's wonderful to be speaking with you today.
Oh, Kendall, it's an absolute pleasure to be here and to support you.
Oh, see, I love Dominic because he has been with me. He's seen me grow from a, bedside educator all the way to where I'm at today. He's been a constant stream of support. But Dominic, what I've seen from you is you've had a career that has spanned from coast to coast, from expert clinician to now executive level vice president positions. But where did your nursing career start? How did you get rooted here? And then we'll talk about this big growth that you've been able to achieve throughout your career.
Sure, great, Kendall. So where do we begin? Long ago, we'll say. My career, I guess we'll call it my professional career, actually did not start in nursing. I did my first degree in business and mathematics and actually pursued a career in finance for the first few years of, I guess I'll say, my young adulthood. During that time, I actually had a very ill parent who I lost when I was 24. And spending the time in the hospital made me realize, I loved the finance profession, but I needed to do more. So I took the leap, did an accelerated bachelor's program with the goal of going into women's and children's health, which is usually not the first kind of direction that many cisgender male nurses go into, when they enter the profession. But I knew that was where my passion was and where I wanted to be. So knowing I was going back to my hometown of Baltimore, I definitely wanted to work at an institution where I knew I would learn the most and where I would be engaged in a culture where nursing was treated as an equal player on the healthcare team. So I brought myself to Johns Hopkins Hospital, a place in which will always have my heart, and I have always had ties to, even to this day, currently in my career. Still have some ties there. Pursued a career, again, in neonatal nursing, but realized that, there are things we need to do outside of the bedside sometimes. You get that core competency clinically, of course, and we serve our families, our patients, etc. But I was seeing a lot of deficiencies in the system, if you will. So I decided that the direction I really wanted to go to, again, you have so many different pathways, as we know in nursing, your advanced practice roles, technical roles, legal roles. Best thing about this profession is the versatility. I knew that leadership was really where my passion was. So I pursued graduate work in leadership and then began to evolve and took some leadership roles throughout my career, overseeing clinical areas and then service lines. And we'll go into obviously more detail as we discuss. Ultimately, I had taken a leap after years in that sort of milieu to private industry. And I took on executive roles, which utilized my nursing leadership skills that I had acquired. And currently I work as an area vice president for Press Ganey, which focuses on patient experience, employee engagement, as well as quality and safety solutions to help support our partners in hospitals.
Wow, what an incredible career. And I will say, as somebody who has been underneath your leadership, you are an incredible leader. You are dynamic and you are involved and you are so authentic and supportive. I will say a lot of people think, though, okay, if you did achieve a significant level of leadership within, that traditional healthcare setting. What were those feelings, or what do you think really made that shift for you where you said, okay, yes, I'm a hospital leader. I've developed these competencies, these skill sets. Where did you get to the point where you're like, I am going to move over to the private sector? What were your feelings around that? And were you terrified? Because I have to admit, I was very scared when I made my leap into the tech sector. And I'm curious what that was like for you.
I think when you're looking at different pathways, and I do this a lot when I mentor newer nurses and new nursing leaders, that are going into it. Again, I love our environment. I love healthcare. I'm passionate about our profession. Our profession, to me, is still considered, even almost 20 years later, a privilege to be part of. But the environment can be a little tough out there in healthcare. And when I'm saying that, I mean specifically sort of in the hospital setting. So you may come to a point where you may need a restoration of balance. And there are times, our leaders, we are servant leaders. It is how it is ingrained in our profession. One of the things I always used to say to my teams was, you take care of the patients. My role is to take care of you as your leader. But sometimes you may hit that sort of limit where, it's really kind of upsetting that work-life balance. And I'll be quite transparent with you, Kendall. That's where I was. And I was seeing the opportunities out there in industry to where I could still have impact, but not necessarily be ingrained within the hospital itself. And so that's really what kind of took me into my first industry role at Keratin. The product, again, was a supportive product for safety, lactation analytics, as well as improving our family experience for our NICU parents. And I knew that I could leverage my expertise clinically, as well as a leader in those spaces, to be able to create a product that would help support our partners in the space.
No, that's fantastic. And I really appreciate you bringing up the fact that, yes, leadership does have this perspective where it does take a lot of yourself, especially if you have that servant leadership style. I know I have that style as well, and I've definitely faced those barriers of what is best for me in the moment. I want to ask that question that I see a lot. Do you feel like, because I will say some of the rhetoric I hear is if you are a leader and you leave what is that traditional healthcare environment, you've left nursing or you are no longer a nurse, do you still feel like the skills and your passion intended as a nurse is still established and very well utilized in the executive positions that you hold?
Absolutely. I will say that, yes, you will hear that you sort of lose that. I'm going to use the vernacular of street cred, if you will, because you're not out on the floor. And what folks who are not in these roles have to understand is that it's all a matter of your perspective and how you keep your finger on the pulse. And by that, I mean things, for example, that I do. Now, I may not be clinical in this role, and a lot of what I deal with is relationship management with executive level stakeholders, in terms of discussing patient safety, nursing leadership, etc. I still am very engaged in professional organizations. I sit on some membership groups with the National Association of Neonatal Nurses. I'm working on building a new chapter in Maryland because we don't have one currently. I sit on the American Association of Men in Nursing on their research panel. So there are different things that I do to keep myself engaged in our space. And I think that's really the key to, again, maintaining that identity. And one of the things that I'd always said when I go into new roles that are in, as I'm going to kind of quote them as industry roles, if you will, is that I always put the caveat out there that I'm still engaged in these activities and I cannot be disengaged because I must maintain my identity as a nurse. I think truly if you're struggling with that role straight, if you're in sort of an industrial role, maybe working in medical sales, medical equipment, education, things of that sort, there are still ways to maintain that identity by not necessarily having to be at the bedside or in that direct clinical frontline leadership role. And when you're having those conversations with other stakeholders that may still be in those roles, again, as I said earlier, I work in sort of a relationship management role, they still understand that you get it and that you've been there. And that, as I've said it before, you've sat in the chair. So you do understand what is going on. The goals are really just keep yourself fresh. That's why we have things like certifications with CEUs, membership organizations. All of those things can still keep you in the know and maintain that identity as a nurse.
Well, and it's a personal perspective. It's my identity is what is me, but I'm trying to stay current, right? I will say for my identity, I still like a little bit of clinical bedside time. And so I still do work a little bit clinically. And that way I think the same goal there, right? Like, do you understand what the current environment is? Can you help speak to what are the current areas of opportunities? Where are we going as a healthcare organization? And like you said, there's a lot of ways to do that in a bunch of different avenues as long as you still have your finger on the pulse. It sounds like from what you've been able to manage. Now, I will say, as I've looked for new jobs, as I've transitioned my career, I'm really curious from you how you actually manage the application to even get into the door for these positions that you've held. When I look at positions within that, quote unquote industry sector, I feel like I'm almost seeing a different language. I don't even know how to translate some of the language I've used as a hospital leader, as an educator, overseeing large medical systems, but how do I even translate that on what it looks like for my skills? How do you identify your skills in the translation of the business sector?
These are great questions. One real big aspect is that a lot of nursing leaders, while they're in the mix, if you will, don't understand the tools that they're gaining in their proverbial tool belt. One of those things is operational excellence. They are so kind of wrapped in the things like staffing, budgeting, performance evaluations. All of those things are key competencies for leadership. Strategic planning, even at the unit-based level, frontline leaders are engaged in that strategic plan. They may not be at the C-suite level, actually devising that plan, but their contributions work their way up to that C-suite level. The things that they're doing every day in daily operations are those tools that can get them into these industry roles. That, coupled with their subject matter expertise within the clinical setting, truly can propel them in such a way. Even from, and I'm going to go back to our first time we met, Kendal, when you were doing the educator role for me, even your outcomes assessment, your competency validations, all of those things you develop as, someone who works in, we'll call it education/professional development, all of those tools apply to things like project management that really are based on creating your plan, going through the implementation, and then your evaluation phase. All of that applies from a software startup to project management, to again, even being maybe an education coordinator for a medical equipment company. All of those tools come in. It's about being able to tell your story in an interview. The biggest thing that I tell folks that I mentor and grow as they're starting to advance their roles, maybe outside of the bedside, outside of conventional frontline leadership roles, et cetera, is tell your story. And tell your story well with true anecdotes and how you're applying principles of leadership to the work you do every day.
But do you feel like when you've walked in for interviews, do you feel, and I always bring this up, does it feel like almost that imposter syndrome? But do you almost feel like they look at you when you walk in like you're a nurse? This is a business position, or this is a vice presidency. This is a giant regional role. Do you ever get that feeling when you walk in, even to just start the conversation, that you already have that maybe working, I hate to say against you, but I will say sometimes, is that a barrier that you feel like is already there that we have to overcome? Or like you said, it's really being able to translate that scope difference in the work that somebody's done? As
always with you, Kendal, you're right on the money, and I will be transparent with true experience. Now, this experience may not have happened in the interview setting, but this happened in the daily workday. I've had many conversations in some roles in the C-suite where they did have that perception of, you're a nurse, you don't understand. Things like cash flow, things like strategic plans, things like even understanding the baseline of margin. And that is when you go in, you respond with your understanding. And unfortunately, our role as nurse leaders is to educate some of our peers in the financial space, operational space, technical space, that nursing leaders, our education, our work experience encompasses so much more than just clinical practice. We do budgets. We do operating budgets and capital budgets. We have to understand variances and we have to justify them. when, we get the call from the C-suite, if our role is as a frontline manager or service line director. So we have that. We can read a cash flow. We understand. Sometimes you have to actually kind of move that needle a bit and show them by practice that you have the skill set that they have, and you have earned your right to have a seat at that table.
I will say that seems like a hard conversation for me. Was that hard for you at first to kind of establish, I hate to say, for lack of a better word, like that street cred of like, I'm meant to be here. I'm owning my experience and expertise. Was that like a scary conversation to have, or did you really it is walking in, but you have to have that confidence of, I know what I do, I know who I am, and I know that I can accomplish the task?
I think that honestly, when I got to this level of my career, I had that sense of confidence that I knew what I knew and I knew what I didn't. And I showed the vulnerability of things that I didn't know. So, for example, working in a startup SaaS space, I am not savvy with the VC world. So I took ownership of, help me understand. This is a new world for me. Help me understand what we need to be able to justify to investors to get this funding, for example. This is, help me understand what inputs we have to get the outcomes we have to, that we're shooting for, rather. But when it came to the other base companies that I shared earlier in the conversation, I came in confident. I think that the goal for folks that are emerging in this space is, again, learn, understand. There will always be that little piece of imposter syndrome because you'll just say, are you sure I should be at this table? You have to own it and you have to embrace it. And if there's something you don't know, this one little piece, that does not mean that you don't know all of it. There's always something that we're going to learn in every experience that we have. And it's okay to sometimes show that vulnerability, that one little component is something that may not be your skill set, but you make up with that with this 75 to 80% other things that you have that true expertise with it.
So, now that you've seen this and you've made this translation, for any individuals who might be listening to us, if there are skill sets, right? Like in nursing, we have certifications, right? If you want to grow your expertise as a nurse leader, you can get certified as a nurse leader, or you can take master's courses or, postgraduate certificate courses. There's a lot of ways, CEs, joining your professional organizations. But now within this private industry sector, if there was a leader, somebody, you were talking to Kendal, wants to grow and enter this, executive level space, are there any areas that you would say, hey, as a benefit to you entering this new industry, these would be areas that I would recommend? Like, you have your roots within a financial sector, and I'm assuming that probably gave you a huge benefit there. Would that be some of the areas that maybe you do see that, yes, nurses can translate and learn, but it might benefit somebody to be able to represent, like, hey, I went and took this course, or, I became, a Lean Six Sigma, or something that could help translate to the business space? What would you say would be the most beneficial training to help get these roles and then be successful within them?
I think we'll talk about it with different kind of layers, Kendal. I will say if you were looking from a formal education layer, we'll just start there. If the goal is to kind of add something from a formal education standpoint, meaning degrees, etc., an MBA, arming a nurse with an MBA, it makes them just enough to be dangerous in a good way.
It's a superpower.
Yeah, it's definitely a superpower. You arm a nurse with an MBA, he or she, they're going to take the world by storm. That's your formal side, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that, because we know that sometimes folks just don't have the bandwidth to be able to do that, the resources, etc. My recommendations are always, one, you can always look at even some of the conferences that are available for nursing leaders that are out there through professional organizations like AONL, etc. Other areas you can look at, and you kind of took the words out of my mouth, which I appreciate, is looking at certifications and trainings like your Lean Six, looking at things in process improvement, looking at things in certifying yourself for project management. Those are also some things that can really help you to get into the industrial space, because again, they're going to teach you those principles of how to see things through from A to Z. And you can always have a nice certification to boot with that. Those are all some things that can add to tools. Something that's on more of the softer side, if you will, from a skill set or a leadership development standpoint, is really establishing and trying to gain mentors out in the space. That is one of the projects that I'm working on actually with an organization with men in nursing. We're actually working on developing a mentoring and professional development program for nurses that either are at the kind of initial stage of their clinical experience or work experience, like that 2 to 5 year. And then we're also working with folks that maybe are like 10 to 15, maybe, kind of getting to that mid area rather of their career, but haven't developed the skills or haven't really understood how to get themselves away from the bedside. It's something, again, we know we need bedside nurses. Trust me, I am very supportive of that. I did bedside for a very long part of my career, always on the side, as you had stated earlier, as you do. But some folks are ready for that change. So we want to try to equip them with the appropriate tools to be successful. So again, you can find it in formal education, you can find it in formal training programs with certifications, and you also can find it with trying to find that mentor in your space. And LinkedIn can be a very, very excellent resource for being able to try to identify those folks that will be able to support you.
I love that. You give a nurse an MBA and they're just a little bit more dangerous, but a great way. I will say it's funny though, because I had a conversation with my older sister who's a lawyer, but she's working in like a corporate banking space. And her and I were even talking, joking around about, hey, we should go get MBAs because of that thing. Should we learn, because we're both working in different industries that are very much, driven by the traditional business language and stakeholders and frameworks, and hey, is that extra piece that makes me like above and beyond superhero in what I'm doing? And I like that because a lot of times we might not look at that as a nursing educational pathway. If we have a bachelor's in nursing, really, should I go into an MBA? And it sounds like from your perspective that really can be a very beneficial educational layer dependent on where somebody wants to go. I will also say too, when you talk about, there is that perception of, we're taking nurses away from the bedside. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I almost feel like the more we have nurses in these other sectors, we are actually creating more nursing roles and more opportunities, right? Because if we don't enter them, I feel like it's that same perception of, well, you're a nurse, you're not meant to be here. But if we do enter these new areas, new positions, new industries, we are expanding in the nursing role and scope. Do you have that same place? Because I look at you and I feel like you are pushing nursing in new and engaging in different directions and creating more opportunities for other people who have these passions. Do you feel like maybe you're helping to make that shift as well? You're opening the eyes of industries to the benefits nurses have.
I do, and I do agree with you with that. What I try to do in my roles is, one, help justify, because we still do have the barriers, as we talked about a little bit earlier in our chat. There are still some barriers about, I hate to put it so glibly, but nurses being taken sort of seriously in the boardroom. I think we have those challenges even in the hospital, some hospital organizations about the power of the CNO. I do see those barriers and challenges. So my goal is to show that the things we learn in our nursing journey, there are the hard skills, again, understanding operations as leaders, etc., and just the resilience and the flexibility and adaptability that we have adopted as clinicians shows so much efficacy in the boardroom. Because I'll be quite frank with you, Kendall, sometimes the things that will come across by other members of, maybe an executive leadership team, as I'd had in my prior career, my prior roles rather, they'll think it's a 4-alarm fire. And honestly, we've seen that. We've held patients till they've died. We've sat and coded patients for 10 minutes. We've seen that true gravity, that true impact of things that can occur. And when we kind of see someone's 4-alarm fire, or they do the sort of Chicken Little, the sky is falling kind of thing in a corporate setting, we realize that's really not that bad. We'll be fine. And that really is that skill set. And again, I call it a soft skill, but the resilience you build, the flexibility, the adaptability, the change management concepts as well. When we roll out 7 new education initiatives, and here are 7 new pumps, and here's a new monitor. Learn it, do it, be it. That flexibility and adaptability is really something that's a standout in our profession. And again, something we can apply to any of our situations out in the global world.
No, and I can't even tell you how many times I've had that conversation, in a tech sector where I'm at, where I'm like, no, I'm fine. Like, y'all, no one's dying today. I'm not, deconning an entire unit for something that's gone down. We're not having this like huge administrative like event because, we have a whole regulatory team in the house, whatever it might be. You ain't got nothing on me. And I feel like that, like you said, there is an emotional regulation that comes with nursing that then I feel like I have a lot of clarity and scope at what you said, where others might be having the sky is falling. I'm like, well, no. We can look at this. We've got options. And you're right. We go day to day in our profession where we have stable patients and then they're unstable, or we have new admissions and then our assignments change, or we have new communication skill sets, or we're working with escalating family members. There's so much flexibility that's needed in a day-to-day nursing profession. I can only imagine that has been, your secret sauce in what you're doing within the boardroom. And I like that because I feel like sometimes there's a perspective, and I say this as, I identify as a female, there's a lot of that perception of nurses are emotional, or we have that emotional because we're caring humans. So can we emotionally regulate in business? And I think you called it out beautifully. We probably have a lot of skills in emotional regulation and, crisis management because of what we do. So what do you love most about your job? I've worked with you for so long, and you are such a passionate, dedicated nurse, right? Everything you talk about, you're mentoring new nurses, you're expanding your nursing specialty, you work at both the state and the national level. But now that you're in this private industry and where your passions have started in nursing, what do you love most about your job and what you do every single day now?
I think it's twofold. One is culture is always key to me in an organization. And again, we all have as people our value sets. Some folks feel that, their job, it can be just a job. It doesn't need to be a career. And they can come in, do their thing, go home, and their value set is at home with their families, kids, etc. Me, culture at my organization or at my job is very important. I am very fortunate to work at an organization where they embrace us always growing professionally, academically, etc. So that is one key driver for me. And as I had stated earlier in our chat, they are supportive of me maintaining my identity in the nursing space. I may not be out there doing a bunch of thought leadership work for my organization as a nurse, but they know that is my value set and they support it. Number one. So culture, very big deal for me. Two, in my day-to-day, what I'm able to do with the relationships I build with my stakeholders in patient experience, employee engagement, nursing leadership, patient safety and risk, what I'm building is, again, that integrity, that authenticity. In healthcare, we all want to talk to people who's walked our walk. It may not be the exact same walk, but there are many commonalities. If you've got a nurse leader in Iowa, I'm sure they can share the same pain points and challenges if they were a nurse leader in Maryland or Florida. A lot of the walk is the same. And for these stakeholders, when I can say to them, I've been a nurse leader X amount of years in this space, I've done this, you'll see the facial expression almost change in the call, Kendall, where you will actually kind of feel them almost say, you know me, you see me. And that's very important. And to me, that still fills my cup, is that I'm out there being able to support these leaders who have resource constraints, be it human, financial, etc., who really, really want the best for their organizations and need a little bit of support. They're strong leaders, but again, there's only so much bandwidth a leader can have at times, depending on how much is kind of heaped on them. So if we can do anything in our power to be able to support with data, work plans, action plans, outcomes assessments, any of the things that we offer in my organization to be able to help them and help their organization improve patient experience, improve sentiment among their workforce, get to zero harm, And last thing I'll say is, again, and also create an environment of high reliability, then I feel that my job is done.
I love that we share that because I feel like the position I got into, right, into a tech industry looking at healthcare education, as you talk, I think of all of the same reasons I transitioned in this space. I knew what it was like to be a hospital and academic educator. And the resource constraints were real. And the things that I wanted to do to better prepare the next generation of nurses, I wanted to do at a more global structure. And now, just like you said, I love that I get to get on calls with nurse educators across the globe. And we have that same conversation of, I know you because I've sat in your seat and I want to help you. I want to be your assist. I want to make this easier for you so you can get back to your passions of being an educator. You want to get to the place where your nursing teams have better patient outcomes. And I will say I have that same perspective in sitting in both seats. I still feel like I'm making a greater impact now because now I get to be a support in so many different ways. And I will say, for those of you who are listening, if anybody ever wants to connect with an amazing nurse leader, Dom is definitely one of those. I say this because he's been part of my life for a while now. And him and I have now moved to different states, different organizations, and we can still connect at a nursing conference. Like, it hasn't been more than a week or two since we've seen each other. But I will say, again, that's what I love about the nursing profession and making close connections. Now, if anybody wanted to make or reach out to you to learn more about how you've expanded your scope or are looking for mentorship, what might be a way that somebody could get a hold of you? Is it through LinkedIn, or what's the best way that someone might connect with you if they really resonate with what you're saying?
I say the best at this point until we start to build up what we're working on. Again, more to come with our mentoring group. We're, really in the process of creating the website, domain, branding, all of that. Please feel free, directly reach out. Dominic Petrovia is my name on LinkedIn. It should be a fairly public profile, so you should be able to reach out to me. I am here to help you. I am a strong advocate for supporting partners, not only that are trying to get out there as nursing entrepreneurs, but also those that maybe are, still in hospital roles, etc., and just need a sounding board or just need some guidance on where to go from here. Happy to help anyone in our space. As I've stated earlier, Kendal, you know how I feel about nursing. It truly is a privilege. I am a proud member of the nursing profession, and I will do everything in my power to not only help promote the profession itself, but promote our peers in this space.
And I will second that because, again, Dom has been nothing but a huge support to me. And I know I can reach out like I reached out to him to come talk and have this chat with me, that he is an individual who's willing to help and support anybody. So for those of you who are listening today, please know one of the best things that I find in our nursing career is the close connections we make with one another and the relationships we build. And that really we can continue to advance our nursing scope and specialty through those connections. The sky is the limit, and I love having these conversations where nursing is not boxed in. We can take our skill set to a variety of places and excel and still have passion in our route as nursing professionals. So thank you to everybody who listened today. I very much appreciate your time. Hopefully today you got a little bit of the goosebumps as I did, as we see other nurses who are just kicking it in other career fields and taking over the world. So please like, share, comment. If there's anything else you'd like to see from the podcast, I'd love to hear it. But Dominic, thank you so much for talking with us today. I greatly appreciate your time. I hope everyone had a wonderful day. This is the Debrief with Kendal Bailey.